Unlock the power of your mind. This is Provocative Enlightenment with Eldon Taylor.
And welcome back. In this hour, we're going to speak with a wonderful lady who is a living example, indeed, in my mind, an icon of walk your talk. Say what you mean and mean what you say. She is absolutely unafraid to be her honest self at all times, regardless of what someone else might think of her. She has overcome many obstacles in life, and today she presents some of the most exciting motivational seminars you could ever experience. So let me tell you a little more about DeDe Mercer Moffett. DeDe Mercer Moffett is known as the snap out of it woman. After snapping out of her 24-year addiction to alcohol, DeDe climbed out of her self-imposed box and reignited her singing and entertaining career. Since 2008, she has performed in front of over 10 million people on some of the biggest stages, like that of the New York Yankees, the Houston Astros, and NBA's Oklahoma City Thunder. DeDe is starting a snap power revolution and helping others to wake up and stand up to what is keeping them locked up, pushed down, and playing small. As a professional speaker, DeDe presents her message, wake up, stand up, and snap out of it, to organizations all across the country. She is the author of the best-selling book, Wisdom Wedgies and Life's Little Zingers. You'll love it. It's a cute book. The host of Snap Out of It radio show, and she is currently in production of her autobiographical one-woman show, If I Stop, Then Who Am I? She is a favorite of mine, and she has been with us before, so let's get her in here. But first, let's listen to DeDe's song.
I say sail, till the windmill, and if you fail, you fail. Everybody says don't, everybody says don't, everybody says don't get out of line. When they say that, then, lady, that's a sign. 9 times out of 10, lady, you are doing just fine. Make just a ripple.
All right. Welcome back to Provocative Enlightenment, DeDe Mercer Moffett.
Good afternoon, Eldon Taylor.
It's good to have you join us. All right. We have just played your song of life. Everybody says don't. Ravinder, by the way, thought that when you sent this over to her that it was actually you singing the song. Which is quite a compliment since that was performed by Barbra Streisand. Not that you don't deserve it, but why this song? What makes this song so much a life song for you?
Well, it's just so powerful and it's so freeing. And, I am that poker of people, right? Eldon, you've said I'm a little irreverent. I tick some people off because I tend to do what people say don't. I talk about some of the tough issues. I hit people in the face sometimes. I kick them in the butt, and they don't like that. So, and rightly so, rightly so. One of my things for 2014 is to be a little softer in my approach. It really is.
I don't know if that's appropriate, but I don't want to interrupt you. You keep going. I love your style, but go ahead, keep going. I'm going to have you kick your butt before you get off the radio, though. So let's make sure we understand that one.
Awesome. But, when everybody says don't, I say do. And I just think that with my own life, even my own self, my own inner talk saying don't do this, don't do that. And once we really question that and challenge that, man, it's just so freeing. And, Barbra Streisand's my idol. I grew up wanting to be an entertainer, and I would go into my room and I would play Barbra Streisand and Johnny Mathis and just being in that dream and that fantasy and singing along with her, changed my life and really helped sculpt my life into being the entertainer that I am today.
Okay, now, you and I haven't chatted for a while, but since we did last, you moved. You moved your home, didn't you? I mean, you don't live in Texas anymore, is that right?
I don't live in Texas anymore. We moved to the beautiful town of Evergreen, Colorado. And, I love Texas. I do. I'm from Oklahoma, so I was there 30 years. I lived in Northern California for 3 years. And then I lived in Texas for 15 years. But last June, we were out here. My husband and I typically come out here once a year anyway for a month, rent a home. And this is someplace that Rick really wanted to live, and I was really resistant to it, Eldon. Every time I would come out, it would take me a week, at least a week, to let go of my Dallas mentality. And what I mean by that is this, that the yards had to be a certain way, that you had to live in a certain type of neighborhood, that everything had to be a certain way. The women had to have all their makeup on. They had to be in their best clothes. So I had to really shed my Dallas identity, and I was really very resistant to living here. But after many years of going through that, I started recognizing, okay, look, DeDe, you're going to have this resistance for a week, so just go with it. It wasn't like I stopped being resistant, but what I did was I stopped being resistant to my resistance, because I knew that in a week I was going to be okay, and then I could see the beauty. And in June, we came up here to this beautiful town of Evergreen, and we drove around, and we came upon this lake, and we got out, and we walked the dogs. And this is so interesting. My husband pointed this out to me the other day. He said, DeDe, look at this picture that we posted on Facebook. It was back in June, and I'm there with my German Shepherd, and I'm bending down, and it's a beautiful picture of the lake, and under the caption it said, wouldn't this be a great backyard? And by golly, it is our backyard. We moved here, and we look right at the lake. We're right above the mountain.
How wonderful.
But it's beautiful. I love it now.
Now, so you've left your Dallas mentality. Does that mean that you feel better, or are you still allowing your resistance to the resistance to be what it's about? Is it okay just to be natural, and the heck with that makeup, and the heck with that, pair of heels, and the heck with that rigid form and fitting into that costume that's expected of you?
Well, I still wear my makeup, I'm going to say. Probably not as often as I used to in Dallas, and I think that Dallas women are gorgeous and all of that. But we tend to identify, with the environment that we're in. But I have to say, I do love this feeling here, and the feeling is this, that I am more about just living life, just feeling peacefulness, of being in nature, of being just totally fulfilled when I'm walking with my dogs and my husband. I have my coffee in my hand, and I don't seem to get so caught up in work that I miss my life. And I think that is part of the culture of being in Dallas, even though, it's a great place. Again, I loved my home. I loved everything about it. It is just different, and I have to say that I love it here now.
We are herd animals, and as you know, we do, accept the hive consciousness to a certain extent, and I can tell you that myself, we moved my offices from Las Vegas to Spokane, Washington, and the idea that I might go into my office in a pair of Levi's and, some casual slip-on shoes, and they're totally foreign, to the way I would have conducted myself in Las Vegas. But I have also found that it is so much more natural. It is so much more, it is so much easier to find yourself, to be truly yourself, when you're not trying to fit in, to dress to some expectation, to be that person that that our society sometimes demands. But you have experience with that. You've got a lot of experience with that.
Well, it's a butt kicker too, Eldon. I'm just going to say this: that when you don't fit in, it is uncomfortable, and I don't think it's for the faint at heart. And even in my own career, as you heard me say in the beginning of the show, you tend to get pushed back by people that want to push you back in that box. And, you have to have really tough skin. And there have been times that I don't have tough skin, and it's painful. And you say, well, maybe I should just say what everybody wants to hear. And then I think, well, hell, then I wouldn't be me, I seriously am going to write a book, Eldon, and here's the title of the book. It's going to be called Beliefs, Behaviors, and Balls, because that's what I think you got.
I love it.
You know what I'm saying? You know all about it.
Do I know? Hey, I wear that pair of pants so often you can't believe it.
I don't know. I don't see that you do it in a different way than I do, and I think I need to learn a little bit more from you, because I don't see that people beat up on you like they do on me.
Well, I don't know if they beat up on me. I tend not to, but I do have these circles where there are individuals. I'm going to go at risk. What the heck? I'm talking to you, and I'm going to make you go to risk. So there are folks that I associate with because of what I do that are in the same genre, who make it up as they go along, who just, they pass out glittering generalities like they were a politician. And, it's BS. And I don't have a problem calling them on the carpet when I encounter that. And that does tend to alienate, some folks. And indeed, we've received letters on this show here where, and I can remember one not too long ago, where the woman criticized me for catching someone at saying something that was incorrect. And she pointed out to me in her letter that I shouldn't do that because I'd be alienating the very people who are in my community from whom I should want support in order for my business to prosper. But it's not been about business prospering to me. It's been more about, you have to just tell it the way it is. If you can't tell it truthfully, if what you're going to do is just tell people what they want to hear, you're just going to pass out platitudes and give them that pablum that some folks seem to want, I don't know how you live with yourself. I don't know how you can consider yourself to be a success. I don't see how that's authentic in any way, shape, or form. So it just simply doesn't fit with me. I often think of it this way, DeeDee, and I would put you in the same camp. There's a story about Reuben in the Bible, and David gets the coat of many colors, and of course he is the favored son, and Jacob is, not exactly following the traditional patriarchal, system, going down to the older son. And so his brothers aren't really happy with him, and there comes a point where they're going to knock him off. But Reuben says, no, that's not the right thing to do. What Dad does is not correct. But doing that is also not correct. So we'll sell him. And so Reuben is the one who's, and in the Jewish tradition, they would say the one who stands alone. He stood up to both the brothers and the father. And very often I feel sometimes like I'm in that camp, the house of Reuben, where, you're trying to do your best at just telling it how it is, but you're finding yourself standing there alone. You identify with that, I know.
Absolutely, I do. Absolutely, I do. And, as somebody who makes their living out in the speaker world, that has been something that I've really had to wrestle with. How do I continue to be the genuine, authentic DeeDee, and continue to have a career? And I've had to make that decision and say, if I'm going to stand up and affect someone's life, then I have to be me. And I'm not going to be for everybody. I am passionate about looking past illusions, as you are. That's why I love your work. And, you can go down that rabbit hole, and you can just keep going down that rabbit hole. But I really love to study the mind, the heretics and the biases of the mind, and how we come up with the things that we come up with, why the herd mentality is the way it is. Why do we feel so secure in just going along with what everyone says? And it's just not enough for me. It's just not exciting enough for me to do that. And I know that may be politically correct. Listen, I don't walk into a party and pick a fight with everybody the way that it seems like people do on Facebook. I mean, it's ridiculous, the things that go on Facebook. I mean, it really is. I've even thought, okay, I'm done with this. I'm so done with Facebook. Just because it gets ridiculous. My husband said, "You toughen up, DeeDee. Come on, snap out of it." And
you don't want to be done with it. You do a great job. You do a great job on Facebook.
Yeah, it is what it is, you know, and even you talk about I saw a post, and I hate this positive mantra. It says, if you don't have anything positive to say, don't say anything at all. I absolutely despise that mantra because I think it is what causes people to not notice what is wrong, to not notice when they're being manipulated, to not notice when they're being scammed, to not notice when something's being pulled over on them. Because if you can say, well, if you don't have anything to say, don't say anything at all.
It has its time and place, I think. You know, there is a saying also that's called think, and they break it down and say the T is, you know, before you speak, is it true? The H is it helpful? The I is it inspiring? The N is it necessary? And the K is it kind? So are you speaking the truth in a helpful, inspiring, necessary, and kind way? And, you know, unfortunately, sometimes the kindest thing and the most necessary thing is to make sure you're speaking the truth. And I totally agree with you. You know, Ravinder and I were talking, to move on now. We were talking earlier before we came on the show about you. And you and I had a conversation, and Ravinder then got to doing her research. Rev, pick it up. Share the conversation that we had.
Yeah, no, it was true. I think the first time you encountered DeeDee was when you were on her radio show. So that was in about 2011. Am I right, DeeDee?
That sounds about right, yeah.
And then you were on Eldon's show, and, you know, the two of you started doing more and more work together, and you had talked about using Inner Talk. But I was working on a totally different project, and I was digging through our old testimonial files, and I came across a testimonial from you that you had written back in 2008. So
I bet that was on playing golf.
Yeah. Yep. You talked about playing golf. But yeah, it was the fact that you had been using his programs years before the two of you started, you know, doing some work together. So your testimonial just held a whole lot more truth when you have, you know, that kind of history.
So with that
I started using his stuff back when cassettes. So I don't know when you stopped using cassettes or when you started, but when we moved, Eldon, I came across cassettes that I used back in my sales days of yours.
Wow. Well, you know, where I wanted to go next was that part of your story that is the inspiring, it is the beginning. You were an addict for a lot of years. Yep. And you had to overcome that. And that's not something that's easy. Do you want to share that story with us? Because what we're trying to do in this show is look at how people can break those old patterns and can manage to achieve the things that they most dream about. And I love your story of how you moved from addiction to who you are today.
Well, I wish I could say, Eldon, that I just all of a sudden woke up and said, you know, this is stupid. That's not necessarily what happened. Although I can say that maybe in an unconscious way, I was trying to do that with your tapes long before I did snap out of it because, as Ravinder just stated, there were many of your tapes that I purchased and bought in the early 2000s. And I think that you know, helped as I came up to this snap out of it moment. And I drank for 24 years. And you know what's really weird is I was an alcoholic where I blacked out most of the time when I drank, if not all the time. And I got to the point where I was drinking 3 bottles a night. it was nothing for me in the sales world to go to a trade show and have 6 glasses of wine and 3 cosmopolitans and be, throwing up in the bathroom and then get up and go to a meeting the next day. That's pretty much, how I led my life. But what's interesting about that is that I was using all of these tapes of yours, self-confidence and sales, and here I was, this extreme alcoholic, and I was very successful in my sales career. Now, I'm not advocating, hey, if you're an addict, just use Eldon Taylor's tapes, and you can still be an addict and be successful. I would hope that you would use, Eldon's tapes in order to help you snap out of it. But what happened was, I was getting married, and we were just 2 months away from our wedding, and we were at a business conference, my fiance and I, and I had 13 glasses of wine, so it was another one of those very, very bad drunks. And he'd had enough. I mean, he was just done. And I could tell he was done. The energy had changed. It was one of those things that there weren't any words anymore. There was just that feeling and that knowing. And so I knew my back's against the wall. I've got to do something. And it was very uncomfortable. I never want to leave the impression that once you, and when I say snap out of it, Eldon, I mean this, is that is the moment where you make a decision. There's a lot of transitions that you have to go through on that path. Right. But I made a decision at that point that something had to change. And it's been 7 years now, and life has changed dramatically. My thinking has changed dramatically. And I look back, it's just amazing. It's just amazing the illusions that we grab onto, the misinterpretations about ourselves that we have, and they control our lives, and we act from those. I mean, it's just a fact. I mean, that programming, whatever your programming is, be it untrue, and mine was certainly untrue. I lived that life, and today I still have to monitor my thinking. I still have to listen to my inner talk. I still have to do the work, because I think that the mind seems to always want to go in that negative direction. So I think whatever we can do, and certainly your tapes are very beneficial to help move us in a direction that we want to go, because it can become overwhelming, but it can be done. And life is a challenge. Life is still uncomfortable from time to time, but it is so inspiring to myself, and it's so exciting to myself to be where I am today and to see what I can do with my life.
We have a break coming up. When we come back from that break, I want to ask you more about that moment where you made that decision that things have to change. I mean, the fact of the matter is the brain is a believing machine. It is a belief machine. In fact, many researchers argue that it must be a belief machine in order to promote our very survival. We have to believe that we won't float upwards. We have to believe in cause and effects. We have to believe in our neighbors or our friends. We must be believing people. So the machine, the brain, generates belief after belief after belief, and as you point out, they're not necessarily always valid beliefs. So, when we come back, we'll pick it up from there. We hope you're enjoying our show today with our discussion about change. Remember to learn more about our guests and their websites by simply going to provocativeenlightenment.com. We'll be right back in just a couple of minutes, so please stay tuned.
Every day, every moment, we face choices. Yet, how many of those choices are truly our own? Are you ready to step onto the path of discovery? Read Eldon Taylor's New York Times bestseller, Choices and Illusions, now revised, updated, and expanded. Eldon combines provocative information, scientific research, and his own life's journey into a powerful message that we have the power to change. All we must do is be willing to choose to take the chance and change. Get your copy today from all bookstores.
Have you talked to yourself lately? What does that inner voice say? Are you constantly hearing negative feedback? Ready for a change? Inner Talk, Eldon Taylor's patented subliminal technology, can do just that. Change your inner self-talk. Turn off the negative by replacing it with positive affirmations. Inner Talk has been researched at universities such as Stanford and by governments around the world, and has been proven effective at priming your self-talk. Armed with a new positive outlook, you'll find everything becomes easier, from losing weight to stop smoking, giving presentations to riding horses. Learn new things to being a powerful salesperson. Choose your title for change today. Visit www.innertalk.com. That's INNERTALK.
Unlock the power of your mind. This is Provocative Enlightenment with Eldon Taylor. You can join in the conversation by calling 877-230-3062. And for our international callers, you can join us by dialing your country code and 425-644-5620. You can also participate by entering the chat room at eldontaylor.com/chat. You can email Eldon from anywhere on the world by sending an email to eldon@eldontaylor.com. Now, back to the show.
A little DD Mercer Moffett.
It starts again. Voices in your head, your whole world's caving in. With visions of the way your life could have been, should have been. Whose life am I living in? Spinning round. Brace yourself for a head-on collision. Can't turn around. Beautiful addiction hides all the shame. Is it too late to change? You can stand in the light. It will heal the hurt. You can run and hide, make a lie the truth, but you cry. You scream at the top of your lungs. You live, but your life, it goes now. So scared to let you go. I know our road is at the end. My soul's crying out for me to live again. It says, turn around, look at me, I'm the you you're meant to be. Brace yourself for a head-on collision. Can't turn around. Beautiful addiction hides all the shame. Is it too late to change? You can stand in the light. It will heal the hurt. You can run and hide, make a lie the truth, but you cry. You scream at the top of your lungs. You live, but your life, it goes now. See me, and I am free, no longer chained. Finally, I know my name, unashamed. But surrender to the pain. It's not too late. Turn around. How dark becomes a brand new day. Brace yourself. Beautiful addiction hides all the shame. Never too late to change. You stand in the light. It will heal the hurt. You can run and hide, make a lie the truth, but you cry. You scream at the top of your lungs. You live, but your life, it goes now.
Welcome back. If you just joined us, we're speaking with DeDe Mercer Moffett about her life and work and her lovely music. Okay, now, DeDe, that was your latest recording. If I have it right, it is your newest single, and it is called Beautiful Addictions. It is a song you wrote with Monty Wells of Denmark, and the song expresses how people hide from their shame and their pain via various addictions. So, why do you call it Beautiful Addictions?
Well, it's sort of a play on words, but I have to say that, when people ask me about my life as an alcoholic versus now, I have to admit that for a lot of, it was great. And I have to be honest about that when I drank, I felt normal. When I drank, I was able to quiet down all the voices in my head. When I drank, I was able to believe that I was funnier, that I was smarter, that I was more talented. I didn't really have to face me, and that was really beautiful. But the fact of the matter is that, and two, I have to say that people, when you are successful as an alcoholic, I never lost a job, I never got a DUI. People tend to look at your life differently when you have the money, when you have the house, and you have the cars, and you have all that kind of stuff that people, quote unquote, call success. Then they think you have a beautiful life, and so the whole song was sort of a play on words that, in a way, these things that addict us make us feel better for a certain amount of time. Because let's face it, if we weren't hurting, we wouldn't become addicted in the first place. We wouldn't reach out for something to help anesthetize what we're feeling. But then it takes hold of you, and it takes you down. And so that's why I called it beautiful. I think there are a lot of people out there, especially from the world that I came from, which is the corporate world, who have an addiction, and yet we look at their lives on the outside and we say, gosh, I wish I had that life. They're so lucky. It's so beautiful. And so that was the meaning behind the song.
You know that I'm one of your biggest fans. I love your music. I love your voice. But I'm also, I have a great appreciation for what you've gone through. Before we went to the break, you said there came a point where you changed your mind. You suddenly said it has to be different. Do you think we all have to have that level of appreciation in ourselves that says, okay, this is it, that's it. I don't know what I have to do, but I'm going to do whatever I need to do to change this before we'll ever really make the change?
I think so. I really do think so. And I've had a lot of experience with addicts, and maybe I'm wrong. We have certainly have some other addicts in our family, but something has to happen. There's this point. Something happens that you say, I can't do it anymore. It's not worth it anymore. I'm going to lose. Know something. I think you have to have that awareness in order to go down the path you're getting ready to go down. That's not to say that there aren't people out there, Eldon, that will ride these addictions all the way down, that there aren't people out there that have so much incredible pain that they will never snap out of it. I've studied a lot with Dr. Gabor Mate, and he's an addiction specialist, and his book is riveting. And it really does talk about that there are some people that the programming is so extensive and the trauma is so extensive that they, quite frankly, are never going to snap out of it. But for those who have this level of awareness, that have some support in their life, that have, I think I don't even know how to. There's something wholeness, there's something that they can grab onto. There's somebody that believes in them, and quite frankly, that was my husband. That he stuck with me, and he believed that I could snap out of it, and I didn't want to lose him, and I wanted to prove to him that I could do it. And there were days that I wasn't sure, but I just took it one day at a time. And there were days that were very tough. But one thing that I know is this, is that the further we get back from a situation, the better we can see it. And I remember in the beginning going into a restaurant, and I said to my husband, everybody in the world is getting to drink but me. And he looked around and he said, DeeDee, do you realize there's only 2 people in here that have a glass of wine? But in my mind, I saw that everybody was drinking but me. Today, 7 years later, my husband has a glass of wine. I could care less. I'm around people that drink. I could care less. It doesn't affect me anymore like it did. My thinking has changed, and therefore my reality has changed.
Right. You know, I'm hesitant to give up on anybody. I believe that everybody has within them the potential to change, but I do think you have to make that conscious decision. You have to, I mean, I can tell you myself, you know, I relate to what you were saying about Inner Talk. You were playing, you know, maybe the golf program and the powerful sales program and not paying any attention to addiction. I did the same thing for years. I smoked 3 packs of cigarettes, you know, from the time I started smoking when I was 15. So for over 30 years, I smoked 3 packs of cigarettes a day. And, you know, I can remember taking an Inner Talk tape back in the cassette tape days and putting it in my car because somebody said to me, well, what are you smoking for? You do non-stop smoking programs. And I thought, all right, well, I'm not ready to stop smoking, but I'll play this tape and maybe it'll help me get ready. And, you know, my cigarettes started to taste horrible. And, DeeDee, I mean, you know, I'd go to the store and buy a fresh carton and they were just, they were stale. So one morning I, you know, sat down for my coffee, lit up a cigarette. It was hard. I got in my car and I drove to 7-Eleven. I got out, I went in, I felt the packs. I made sure that I had a nice, soft, fresh pack, and I bought a new pack of cigarettes. And I went out, my cup of coffee, and sat down in this was 1976, in my 1976 Audi. It had a Blaupunkt player, and I popped in this cassette tape, and the Stop Smoking tape. And, you know, the minute the tape came on, I realized that the reason that my cigarettes tasted horrible were those messages on that tape that were telling me that they tasted horrible. I pulled the tape out of the car. I threw it down on the sidewalk there alongside the car, and I stomped on it. I said 1986. I just stomped on this tape, just crushed this tape. It was just, you know, and then my cigarettes started tasting better. But my son came to me years later, and he said, Dad, I'm going to smoke if you don't stop. You know, and I looked at him and I thought, you know, my father smoked, my mother smoked, he probably will. And that's when I made the decision. I'm going to stop smoking. You know, that's it. I'm going to stop. I had my reason. I made the conscious decision. That's it. I've had enough, as you say, you know, and I think we can do that about everything. As we look at, you know, this time of year and folks all make their resolutions and say, this is what I'm going to do. I think the resolutions don't work because most people don't honestly make that commitment that I'm going to make this work. I'm going to make this change, irregardless of what I do. You know, Cristian Enescu, Dr. Enescu was on the show just before you, and he made a really important point, I think. He said, before I could help people change, I had to change myself.
Amen.
The story you tell, the stories that you share, the excitement you bring to your presentations, they're all representative of the change you made yourself, the power that's in the change that you made in your own life. You know, that's my thinking on that anyway, DeeDee. You share. Go ahead.
I totally agree, and you know, many years ago, I was going to jump into the whole coaching industry, right? I'm going to coach people, and then I realized, you know what? I don't know a damn thing, and had to back out of that. I had to really back out of that for a while. And so I probably will start doing some workshops this year, but, it's been 7 years and a lot of study and a lot of work. And I certainly, if I...
a lot of integrity. Add that in. And a lot of integrity, because there are many folks out there that they're just going for the bucks. And I'm not saying that they have an evil intent. I don't mean that. I just mean they don't stop long enough to say, wait a minute, what qualifies me, to do this? So anyway, I don't want to interrupt your story. I just want to make sure that you add that jewel into the gemstone collection, because that's one of the things that I really admire about you, your integrity. That's what's behind your ability to make waves, to say it how it is. So go on.
Well, it's so true that if I want to break the illusion, because I think that illusions are dangerous, and I mean it in this way, that if I put up this illusion that all I did was have to make a decision, boom, I snapped out of it, I'm skipping down the street, life was fabulous, I just sat in my room and I visualized, and that's all I did. I never changed the behavior, I never changed the inner talk, I never changed anything, and all of a sudden I got to sing for the New York Yankees, and I'm up on the stage speaking, and it's just been easy, and all you have to do is buy my this or that, and it's going to... I think that is so wrong, and it is damaging, because I have purchased things like that, where somebody has put out this illusion, and it's not that I want to sell the dark part of life, but I do want to sell the reality, and it says, listen, snapping out of any addiction is going to be uncomfortable, period. So if you can withstand being uncomfortable, you can make those commitments, you can take it one day at a time, and you can get to the other side. No doubt, I know that, I live it. Or I can tell people what it's going to be like, what do you have to do to get on the speaking circuit, what is it, how much money is it going to take, how many people are going to have to be involved. I mean, there's a lot to everything, as you know. And that's really, I wish the world operated like that, Eldon. I wish the world operated more on truth, that said, this is the way it is. Do you want to buy into that or not? Do you want to go down this road? Do you think that you can withstand this type of pressure, this type of criticism, this type of pain, this amount of money? If you can, then okay, let's go. To me, that's how I like to understand life, because if not, it's just we're reaching for something that isn't even real. Do you know what I'm saying?
Oh, absolutely. Too many people want a quick fix. They want instant gratification. And there are all these gurus out there who've listened to their publicist. You missed the first hour of the show, but the publicists who tell them, tell the public you have 5 easy principles, the secrets to your success, or 10 steps and, nirvana in their life. And that's what, that's what I object to, and that's what you object to, because change isn't easy. It doesn't matter what kind of change it is. We resist change. Our belief systems are such that you challenge someone's belief. It doesn't matter. It could be about, politics. It could be about, the neighbor. And they immediately become defensive. It's important that they defend that belief, because after all, they hold that belief. And so it becomes really, really difficult for us to recognize life beliefs that are self-destructive and self-sabotaging, and then even more difficult to make those changes, because we have to deal with the hardship that we were wrong. And that it, as with my dependency on nicotine, or perhaps yours with alcohol, it isn't just about the nicotine or the alcohol either. It's about the underlying causes behind that, as you say, the pain and the escape mechanism, how we assuage anxiety, and so on and so forth. So, but we have a whole structure of beliefs that support that as well. Listen, Ravinder is sitting here. She's waving her finger at me because you shared, part of yourself in my book, Choices and Illusions. And I know she wants to ask you about some of that, so I'm going to let her go ahead and get her finger out of my face and ask you your questions.
I never waggle my finger. I'm too nice for that. Actually, I'm seeing a great similarity. The story that you are sharing with us is, on the surface, very different to the story Dr. Enescu shared with us. But the similarity that I'm picking up on is Dr. Enescu started working with the Inner Talk programs when he was training to become a doctor, because that internship and all of that stuff, it's very, very intensive and very, very stressful. So he picked up programs initially to help him deal with stress and learning. You have said that, you started working with the Inner Talk programs because you were using it in business and in sales and, that direction. But both of you reached a point where you wanted to take the next step. For Dr. Enescu, it was move into the more spiritual programs. But for you decided, at some point, you had that decision that you were going to do something about your addictions and what programs to choose for that. So my question actually goes more to Eldon directly here, because, on all of the Inner Talk programs, there are certain affirmations that are in common. So you do have the spiritual kinds of programs and the forgiveness set. So when you forgive yourself, you open yourself up to learning a whole lot more. Wouldn't you see that connection there?
I'm sure I would. I'm sure DeeDee does too. You're right. There's a certain boilerplate that we put on every single program. The forgiveness set, as we call it. I forgive myself. I forgive all others. I am forgiven. Critically important. I've lectured on that. I've written books on that. This has been something we've done for 30 years. Indeed, I used that set of messages initially to eliminate the possibility of inmates displacing responsibility by blaming where they were or what they did on somebody else. It's the story I tell in Choices and Illusions. But we were able actually to interdict recidivity rate and lower aggression and hostility, utilizing that set of messages at the Utah State Prison in a very early double-blind study back in the 80s. And then since then, or after that, we took that into several other fields and found that whether it's an elite athlete, a Fortune 500 executive, a truck driver, a homemaker, we all struggle with guilt, shame, and our tendency is to blame, to push that outward. And so the only way to undo that is essentially forgiveness. Well, perhaps forgiveness does open the door for us to accept that, our life is about more than what we come to think about it. And, DeeDee, we're going to be out of time here in a couple of minutes. I don't want to take any more on this. How important do you think forgiveness is? And do you think maybe it does tend to lead us toward a more spiritual path? Absolutely.
Absolutely it does. I think even those of us who think that we're really forgiving, I think if we dig down, there are many of us who just ignore. We just push it out of our minds. We're not really forgiving. We may just do that participate in that mantra. If we don't have anything positive to say, we don't say anything at all, and we tend to not look at that. I think if we really become aware of our inner talk and our feelings, we connect those two, we're going to see that a lot of times we are not forgiving. And we're just weighing ourselves down, that for some reason the mind really wants to hold on to, if I forgive, then I'm letting them off the hook. Well, let them off the hook so you can frickin' breathe. You know what I'm saying? I want to say that one of your inner talks, I played on the ending self-destructive patterns, because you talk on that, and I find your voice, even before I ever spoke to you, it was just so comforting to me, and that's when you talk. And I love that one, ending self-destructive patterns, and I think that was one very valuable one for me. I just wanted to throw that out there for you.
DeeDee, I want everybody to know how to reach you, especially to obtain some of your wonderful music and learn more about you. in about 45 seconds, tell our audience how they can learn more about you, reach you, and get a hold of some of that music.
You can find my music on Amazon or CD Baby. You can also go to my website, which is DD Mercer, and that's MURCER Moffett, MOFFETT.com. You can find me on Facebook, and you can find me on Twitter. My Twitter is DD. It's the two letters, DD Mercer Moffett.com.
I suggest you all do so. I love her music. I love this lady. My wife is sitting right here. It's platonic love, but she, anyhow, you do a wonderful job. I love what you do. Thanks so much for joining us, DeeDee. We've come to the end of our time for this episode of Provocative Enlightenment. I want to thank our guests and all of you for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed our show and will join us again next week, same time and same place. And do tell your friends. Let's have them join us as well. Now remember, if you have comments on our show, do please let us know. Okay, until next time, wherever you are in the world, remember, believing in yourself always matters.
Provocative Enlightenment has been brought to you by Progressive Awareness Research and other sponsors. Provocative Enlightenment is a syndicated show and appears on other networks. For a schedule of show times, visit provocativeenlightenment.com. If you're interested in becoming a sponsor, write to Eldon at eldontaylor.com.